Hello, this is Morel Benard with Lady Chatterley's Lover. Yes, Lady Chatterley's Lover, the continuation of the story. Last words were, he balked, I loathe all that, I wanted a woman who wanted me, and wanted it, is what he said. Then came Bertha Coots. They'd lived next door to us when I was a little lad, so I knew all right. And they were common. Well, Bertha went away to some place or other in Birmingham, she said, as a lady's companion. Everybody else said as a waitress or something in a hotel. Anyhow, just when I was more than fed up with that other girl, when I was 21, back comes Bertha, with airs and graces and smart clothes and a sort of bloom on her, a sort of sensual bloom that you'd see sometimes on a woman or on a trolley. Well, I was in a state of murder. I chucked up my job at Butterley because I thought I was a weed clerk in there, and I got on as an overhead blacksmith at Trevershaw, shoeing horses mostly. It had been my dad's job, and I'd always been with him. It was a job I liked, handling horses, and it came natural to me. So I stopped talking fine, as they call it, talking proper English, and went back to talking broad. I still read books at home, but I blacksmithed and had a pony trap of my own and was my Lord Duckfoot. My dad left me £300 when he died, so I took on with Bertha. And I was glad she was common. I wanted her to be common. I wanted to be common myself. Well, I married her, and she wasn't bad. Those other pure women had nearly taken all the balls out of me, but she was all right that way. She wanted me, and made no bones about it, and I was as pleased as Punch. That was what I wanted, a woman who wanted me to fuck her. So I fucked her, like a good one. And I think she despised me a bit for being so pleased about it and bringing her breakfast in bed sometimes. She sort of let things go. Didn't get me a proper dinner when I came home from work, and if I said anything, flew out at me. And I flew back, hammer and tongs. She flung a cup at me, and I took her by the scruff of the neck and squeezed the life out of her, that sort of thing. But she treated me with insolence, and she got so she'd never have me when I wanted her. Never. Always put me off, brutal as you like. And then when she'd put me right off and I didn't want her, she'd come all lovey-dovey and get me. And I always went. But when I had her, she'd never come off when I did. Never. She'd just wait. If I kept back for half an hour, she'd keep back longer. And when I'd come and really finish, then she'd start on her own account. And I had to stop inside her till she brought herself off. Wriggling and shouting, she'd clutch herself down there, and then she'd come off, there in ecstasy. And then she'd say, that was lovely. Gradually, I got sick of it, and she got worse. The sort of got harder and harder to bring off. And she'd sort of tear at me down there, as if it was a beak tearing at me. My God, you think a woman's soft down there like a fig, but I tell you, the old rampers have beaks between their legs, and they tear at you with it till you're sick. Self, all self, tearing and shouting. They talk about men's selfishness, but I doubt if it can ever touch a woman's blind beakiness. Once she's gone that way, like an old troll, and she couldn't help it. I told her about it. I told her how I hated it. And she'd even try. She tried to lie still and let me work the business. She'd try, but it was no good. She got no feeling of it from my working. She had to work the thing herself, grind her own coffee. And it came back on her like a raving necessity. She had to let herself go and tear, as if she had no sensation in her except on the top of her beak, the very outside top tip that rubbed and tore. And that's how old wars used to be. So men used to say it was a low kind of self-will in her, a raving sort of self-will, like in a woman who drinks. Well, in the end, I couldn't stand it. We slept apart. She herself had started it in her bouts when she wanted to be clear of me, when she said I bossed her. She had started having a room for herself. But the time came when I wouldn't have her come into my room. I wouldn't. I hated it. And she hated me. My God, how she hated me before that child was born. I often think she conceived it out of hate. Anyhow, after the child was born, I left her alone. And then came the war, and I joined up. And I didn't come back till I knew she was with that fellow at Stack's Gate. He broke off, pale in the face. And what is the man at Stack's Gate like? Asked Connie. A big baby sort of fella, very low-mounted. She bullies him, and they both drink. My word, if she came back, my God, yes, I should just go, disappear again. There was a silence. The pasteboard in the fire had turned to grey ash. So when you did get a woman who wanted you, said Connie, you got a bit too much of a good thing. Aye, seems so. Yet even then I'd rather have her than the never ones, the white love of my youth, and that other poison-smelling Lily and the rest. What about the rest? Said Connie. The rest? There is no rest. Only to my experience, the mass of women are like this. Most of them want a man, but don't want the sex. But they put up with it as part of the bargain. The more old-fashioned sort just lie there like nothing and let you go ahead. They don't mind afterwards. Then they like you. But the actual thing itself is nothing to them, a bit distasteful. And most men like it that way. I hate it. But the sly sort of women who are like that pretend they're not. They pretend they're passionate and have thrills, but it's all cock-a-loopy. They make it up. Then there's the ones that love everything, every kind of feeling and cuddling and going off, every kind except the natural one. They always make you go off when you're not in the only place you should be, when you go off. Then there's the hard sort that are the devil to bring off at all, and bring themselves off like my wife. They want to be the active party. Then there's the sort that's just dead inside, just dead, and they know it. Then there's a sort that puts you out before you really come, and go on writhing their loins till they bring themselves off against your thighs. But they're mostly the lesbian sort. It's astonishing how lesbian women are consciously or unconsciously. Seems to me they're nearly all lesbian. And do you mind? Asked Connie. I could kill them. When I'm with a woman who's really lesbian, I fairly howl in my soul, wanting to kill her. And what do you do? Just go away as fast as I can. But do you think lesbian women are any worse than homosexual men? I do, because I've suffered more from them. In the abstract, I have no idea. When I get with a lesbian woman, whether she knows she's one or not, I see red. No. But I wanted to have nothing to do with any woman anymore. I wanted to keep to myself, keep my privacy and my decency. He looked pale, and his brows were sombre. And were you sorry when I came along? She asked. I was sorry, and I was glad. And what are you now? I'm sorry from the outside. All the complications and the ugliness and the recrimination that's bound to come, sooner or later. That's when my blood sinks and I'm low. But when my blood comes up, I'm glad. I'm even triumphant. I was really getting bitter. I thought there was no real sex left. Never a woman who'd really come naturally with a man, except black women. And somehow, well, we're white men, and they're a bit like mud. And now, are you glad of me? She asked. Yes, when I can forget the rest. When I can't forget the rest, I want to get on with the table and die. Why under the table? Why? He laughed. Hide, I suppose, baby. You do seem to have had awful experiences of women, she said. You see, I couldn't fool myself. That's where most men manage. They take an attitude and accept a lie. I could never fool myself. I knew what I wanted with a woman. And I could never say I'd got it when I hadn't. But have you got it now? Looks as if I might have. And why are you so pale and gloomy? Belly full of remembering, and perhaps afraid of myself. She sat in silence. It was growing late. And do you think it's important, a man and a woman? She asked him. For me, it is. For me, it's the core of my life if I have a right relation with a woman. And if you didn't get it, then I'd have to do without. Again, she pondered before she asked, and do you think you've always been right with women? God, no. I let my wife get to what she was. My fault a good deal. I spoiled her. And I'm very mistrustful. You'll have to accept that. It takes a lot to make me trust anybody inwardly. So perhaps I'm a fraud too. I mistrust. And tenderness is not to be mistaken. She looked at him. You don't mistrust with your body when your blood comes up, she said. You don't mistrust then, do you? No, alas. That's how I've got into all the trouble. And that's why my mind mistrusts so thoroughly. Let your mind mistrust. What does it matter? The dog sighed with discomfort on the mat. The ash-clogged fire sank. We are a couple of battered warriors, said Connie. Are you battered too? He laughed. And here we are, returning to the fray. Yes, I feel really frightened. Aye. He got up and put his shoes to dry and wiped his own and set them near the fire. In the morning he would grease them. He'd poke the ash of plasterboard as much as possible out of the fire. Even burnt, it's filthy, he said. Then he brought sticks and put them on the hob for the morning. Then he went out a while with the dog. When he came back, Connie said, I want to go out too for a minute. She went alone into the darkness. There were stars overhead. She could smell flowers on the night air, and she could feel her wet shoes getting wetter again. But she felt like going away, right away from him and everybody. It was chilly. She shuddered and returned to the house. He was sitting in front of the low fire. Oh, cold. She shuddered. He put the sticks on the fire and fetched more till they had a good crackling chimneyful of blaze. The rippling, running yellow flame that made them both happy, warmed their faces and their souls. Never mind, she said, taking his hand as he sat silent and remote. One does one's best. Aye, he sighed, with a twist of a smile. She slipped over to him and into his arms as he sat there before the fire. Forget then, she whispered. Forget. He held her close. In the running warmth of the fire, the flame itself was like a forgetting, and her soft, warm, ripe weight. Slowly, his blood turned and began to ebb back into strength and reckless vigor again. And perhaps the women really wanted to be there and love you properly, only perhaps they couldn't. Perhaps it wasn't all their fault, she said. I know it. Do you think I don't know what a broken back snake that's been trodden on I was myself? She clung to him suddenly. She had not wanted to start all this again, yet some perversity had made her. But you're not now, she said. You're not that now, a broken back snake that's been trodden on. I don't know what I am. There's black days ahead. No, she protested, clinging to him. Why? There's black days coming for us all and for everybody, he repeated with a prophetic gloom. No, you're not to say it. He was silent, but she could feel the black void of despair inside him. That was the death of all desire, the death of all love, this despair that was like the dark cave inside the men in which their spirit was lost. And you talk so coldly about sex, she said. You talk as if you had only wanted your own pleasure and satisfaction. She was protesting nervously against him. Nay, he said. I wanted to have my pleasure and satisfaction of a woman, and I never got it, because I could never get my pleasure and satisfaction of her unless she got hers of me at the same time. And it never happened. It takes two. Oh, it takes two. I'm going to leave that there. Join me in the next episode of Lady Chatterley's Lover. Story of Lady Chatterley's Lover. Join me in the next video of Lady Chatterley's Lover with me, Morel Benard. Look forward to it then. See you then.